Do you ever feel like your team just isn't listening when you delegate tasks? Or maybe they listen, but you never get the outcome you were hoping for. You brief them, you explain, you answer every question, but the work still ends up landing on your desk. On Monday, the 4th of May, I'm running a free 60-minute masterclass called Get Team Buy-In Without Over-Explaining. And I'll share with you the 3 shifts that'll change how your team hears you, responds to you, and follows through without you. You'll walk away knowing exactly what to change in your very next team meeting. It's free and there are no replays, so grab your seat now at getbuyin.herbusiness.com. That's getbuyin.herbusiness.com. I'll also put the link in our show notes for today's episode, and I hope to see you there. Hi, and welcome to the Her Business Podcast. I'm Suzi Dafnis. I'm the CEO at Her Business, and I am your host. And today we're talking about a challenge that you can experience as a small business leader, no matter how long you've been in business. And that is clearly communicating your vision, your expectations, your standards to your team, contractors, whoever is on your support crew. And if you're running a business and you have team members or contractors, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Because what usually happens is that you have a vision. You can see it clearly, a new product development, a new service, a project, some outcome that you want in your business, and you know what you want to have happen. But when you go to explain it, something goes wrong. Perhaps people nod in the meeting and then nothing comes of it, or you end up with something that's not quite finished or that is completely different to what you had envisioned. Sometimes you don't get an outcome at all and the work comes back to you, having you feeling stuck. You're redoing things, you're fixing things, you're re-explaining, you're putting out fires. And at that point, a project might stall or not happen at all, and you're left thinking, have I hired the wrong people? Am I just not good at explaining things? Is it them or is it me? And what I've come to understand after years of leading teams and mentoring hundreds of business owners is that the problem almost never lies with the vision. It lies in the translation. And today we're going to fix that. I'm going to give you a framework that helps you clearly communicate what you want, why you want it, and when it needs to be done and by whom, in a way that removes confusion and actually creates some results and some momentum in your business. And where I want to start is with a key distinction, because most business owners explain their vision when what they really need to do is enroll others in their vision. So explain versus enroll. There's a big difference between the two. When we explain, we are transferring information, often in a very verbose way or in a really skint way, really not enough detail. But we can give context usually, background, history, all the things that make sense to us because we've been holding the vision in our head for weeks or even months, sometimes years. That's when we're explaining. But when we enroll, our intention is different. We're there to create movement, to get people off the fence and get them into action, to help them feel like they're part of something. It's a way of communicating where they understand their role and they genuinely want to help make it happen. And the truth is, most people do want to help. They want to do a good job. They just need to be enrolled in the vision. And I don't mean your company vision. Yes, you want them enrolled in that. I mean in the vision of an outcome that you want. And I'm going to give you some examples. Now, it can get tricky for us as business owners because we know our businesses deeply and we've been living with the complexity of running a business for years, or what it is that we do, our specialty. We've sometimes been doing that for decades, so we know it up one side and down the other. And that is a real strength, but it can also trip us up because we start to believe that for someone to do the work properly, we need to transfer everything we know into their brain. So we often over-explain. We give too much context. We share our entire thought process, this verbal diarrhea download, when what they actually need in order to get a result for you is actually something much simpler. And what often happens next is that you stop trying to communicate the bigger vision altogether because you're not getting the result you want. And instead, what do? You start managing task by task, giving little morsels of tasks out, hand-holding, micromanaging, because it's easier and less painful than not getting the result you want. And you might recognize this in your own business. Maybe you've been talking about KPIs, key performance indicators, forever. and they still don't happen the way that you want. Or maybe you've tried to implement systems, but things keep slipping through the cracks. Or you have team members who consistently miss deadlines. This one gets up me. And despite repeated conversations, the same issues keep happening. And when I say it annoys me, it's not that I see it happen in my business. It's that I hear women complaining about stuff just not getting done. I'm like, what is happening? So the issue here isn't necessarily the capability of your team members. It's that they are not enrolled in the outcome. And their understanding of the vision and the why behind the work is not the same as yours. So let's close that gap. And I really want you to hear me on this. Your team does not need to understand everything about everything. They do not need to understand everything you understand. In fact, it would be unrealistic to expect them to, because your expertise comes from years of experience. And that is not something you can simply transfer. What they need to know when you're enrolling them in a project or a task or an outcome is this: where are you heading? Why does it matter? And what do you need from them? That's it. 3 simple questions. And when you can answer those 3 questions clearly, you can communicate those 3 things and your vision for anything in about 60 seconds at a really high level. Now you might be thinking, but my project is complex. My business is complex. There are many nuances, and that is true. But the core ask can still be communicated simply, and that becomes the anchor for everything else. So it's not the entire conversation, but the first thing you say will frame everything that follows. So let's have a look at these 3 elements, and I'm going to give you some examples after that. So the first thing is, here's where we're going, here's where we're heading. This is the destination. And it needs to be simple, specific, and concrete, not vague and not wrapped up in long backstory, just a really clear outcome. And as I said, I'm going to give you some examples. The second thing is, here's why it matters. Now, this is the step many people skip because we assume it's obvious, but it often isn't. People want to feel like their work matters, that their role in something you're doing is important, and that they're contributing to something meaningful. So it's important to connect a task to a bigger purpose, a project to a bigger purpose. And the third thing is, here's what I need from you. And this is often the hardest part, especially if you're used to softening your asks or wrapping them in too much niceness, or you feel a little bit guilty about asking people to do things, even when that's what they're there to do. But being clear with your team is not being harsh, it's actually being helpful. When you are direct about what you need and when you need it and who you need it from, you actually make it easier for others to succeed. Now, let me give you a few examples of what this might look like in practice, this 3-part system. So you might say, we're launching the summer sale next month. It matters because it's how we will hit our Q3 revenue target. And I need all creative assets ready by the 15th. So you have in that where we're going, why it matters, what I need from you. Another example is this. This quarter, we are focusing on improving customer retention. That matters because it costs significantly more to acquire a new customer than to retain an existing one. And I need each of you to submit one idea for improving customer experience by Friday. Here's another example. We're launching a new lead magnet next month to grow our email list. It matters because it supports our upcoming promotion. And I need the landing page, the opt-in form, and the email sequence ready by the 20th. In each case, it's just 3 ideas within a sentence. But what do? They remove ambiguity and they give people something clear to work towards. There's no questioning what you've just asked for. And once you've anchored the conversation in that way, then you can move into more details. What the campaign involves, who it's for, how it should be executed, who's doing what and when. Now, for this framework to really work, you also need structure. And that is where a brief comes in. And I'm surprised how many business owners don't brief their teams when there is something at stake, when there is an outcome that you want. Now, a brief is a dedicated moment where you bring people together, you walk them through the project using these 3 statements at the top level, and then you open up the conversation for questions, ideas, and input so that everybody who's involved in this project knows what's happening. This is where real enrollment happens, because people aren't just informed, they're also engaged, they contribute, they take some ownership, they know we're in this together. It does take time to do this properly, but this is the real work of a small business leader. And when you do it well, you get that time back, the time you spent on briefing, you get it back many times over, because you're going to spend less time chasing, fixing, redoing, and re-explaining, and more time leading. So here's what I want you to do in the next week. I want you to have at least one conversation using this framework. Just one. Before you do, go ahead and write out your answers to those 3 questions. Where are we going? Why does it matter? What do I need? What do I need from you? And then notice what happens when you have the conversation. Notice how it's received, how the other person, the people respond. How do you feel as you walk into a conversation with that clarity about what you're going to communicate? Now, I don't recommend you start with a huge project or the most challenging situation. You want to pick something that's going to be an easy win, and that'll help you build your confidence as you practice this new way of communicating your vision about something. Because this is a skill, and like any skill, it gets stronger with practice. If you start moving into high-level briefing using those 3 areas, this is where we're heading, this is why it matters, this is what I need from you, and then you can drill into, and here's what the project is. May I have your feedback? What are your thoughts? And then the next level down is all the details. Now you have the makings of a really good structure inside of your business, a structure that allows you to communicate your vision to your team so that they actually deliver. Now, I want you to give this a go, as I said, and I want you to write to me and tell me how you go. And you can always get me at podcast@herbusiness.com, or you can direct message me on Instagram. But before you rush off and give this a go, I want you to take a minute to imagine what a functional, well-oiled team would look like for you. What would change in the day-to-day? Maybe you never have to edit those pesky social posts again. Maybe you no longer have to open up Canva. Maybe you don't waste any more time arranging than rearranging your client appointments because your team does that for you, right? Whatever it is for you. And then think about what would change over time if you had your team enrolled in the outcomes that you want for your business, your financial outcomes, your marketing outcomes, your client service outcomes. Because when you're no longer spending every day firefighting and redoing and managing people and re-explaining things, you are left with time to strategize, time to envision where you want to go next, time to identify what works and what doesn't, time for the big picture things that only you can do in your business and that I want you to be spending more time doing. Imagine no longer feeling like the worst paid employee who manages the business, but the woman who actually leads it into the future. What would that feel like? What would open up for you? What possibilities might appear once you don't have your vision for your outcomes you want blocked by details and to-do lists? This is why this stuff matters so much. Yes, it helps with the headache of daily things like, getting blank looks or not having things delivered on time. But it also gives you the time and the white space to step into your real role as the owner, the leader, the CEO. Now, what we talked about here today is kind of my favorite discussion to have with women in small business. And I say especially women in small business because if you're a leader in a corporation, more and more there's resources available to you. There's training, there's mentoring inside of those organizations. There's so many people taking care of things. But as a small business owner, everyone's looking to you. They're looking to you to manage them, to direct them, to give them the vision. And when you can start to build your skills as a small business leader, everything changes. When you crack the code on communicating your vision, which is what we're starting with today, everything changes. When your team knows where they're going, why it matters, exactly what's needed from them, you can feel the difference. There's motivation, there's excitement, there's alignment, and you get to step into the role you actually built this business for, the role of the person running the business, not doing all the things or putting out all the fires. And if what we've talked about here in this episode struck a chord with you and you want to go deeper on this kind of work, which I hope you do because I'm so freaking excited to work with you on this, I want to tell you about something that I'm running in the second half of the year that starts in May. It's called the Leaders Table. Now, let me explain. This is a 6-month small group experience for women business owners that are done being the bottleneck in their businesses and they're ready to lead differently. Now, this is not a long-term coaching program. It's not a multi-$1,000 thing. It's an opportunity for you to meet with me and a small group of other small business leaders once a month, May through October, over 90 minutes, no modules, no things to catch up on, no onerous homework. Just 6 carefully designed conversations that are going to change how you lead, how you communicate, how your business runs without you being at the center of everything. And we'll cover the kinds of things that we talked about today, but we're going to go deeper into developing your team and developing you right? I want to get you out of micromanaging, picking up everyone's stress, and into becoming the leader that you want to be in your business. Really stepping up, playing a bigger game. So we're going to be working on both the inner and the outer game of being a great leader in your business and really self-leading. Leading yourself, leading others, leading the people in your industry or in your niche. If that's work you're interested in doing, I want to invite you to pull up a seat at the Leaders Table. You can find the details at herleaderstable.com. And I'll put a link in the show notes as well, but it's herleaderstable.com. Spots are limited. It's a small group. We're starting on the 12th of May, which is just around the corner. We already have a great group of women at the table. I would love for you to join us. And if this episode resonated with you, I would love to hear about it. You can send me a message on Instagram. You can find us at Her Business. You can share this episode with another woman business owner who you think might need to hear this. And you can head over to our website, herbusinessnetwork.com/359 to find a summary of today's episode, the process we talked about, and links to any resources that I've mentioned. And if you are new to the show, be sure to hit subscribe or follow wherever you are listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, would you do me a favor and leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts? It really does help other women find us. One person I do want to give a shout out to before I go is one of our listeners, and that's Kim Linton. She has a Jim's bookkeeping service in Ashburton, and she helps people start and grow their business by showing them how to make their viable business idea more viable, right? So she helps them with business plans, understanding cash flow, tax obligations, setting up their data correctly. Really, really valuable. And she said this about the show. She said, a podcast full of actionable advice for your business. She said, Suzi is an amazing advocate for helping women in business. I've now been listening and applying learning from this podcast into my own business. Thank you for your knowledge, intelligence, ability to communicate actionable business advice, and lastly, your grace. Thank you. Well, I am honored, Kim. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope, like Kim, you become a regular listener. I hope you'll join us for the next episode. If you don't already follow, be sure to hit subscribe or follow wherever you are listening. And I hope to see you right back here next week on the Her Business podcast. Remember, this is your business, so play by your rules. Bye for now.